go ahead. Yeah, I can hear you now. Let's go. Well, it would be in person in a hybrid schedule. I do have an 18-year-old. He is a freshman at LSU, and he's going to actually be attending LSU in a hybrid fashion, where some of his classes will be online completely. Other classes will require him to go. If let's say it's a Tuesday Thursday class, he may go on Tuesday, but on Thursday participate online. And it's essential that we do that first of all, so the most vulnerable youngsters can actually participate virtually. Secondly, so parents who have particular concerns for whatever reason can opt into that virtual education. But secondly, or thirdly, I should say, you can't have all the students on campus at the same time because then you can't get the physical separation that the CDC says you have to have. So in order for it to be safe and get that 6 feet of distance and of course accompanied by wearing the mask and the personal hygiene and all that sort of stuff, I do believe that the virtual learning, the distance learning, is going to be an integral component, not just for the classroom, but for example, starting at 6:30 in the morning when kids get on a bus, there's going to be limitations on how many kids that bus can carry, and in order for them to be safe. So for all of those reasons, the hybrid approach is I think essential, and it's also essential that we allow some kids to go virtually the entire school year, or at least until such time as this COVID situation is behind us. Yeah, well, we actually still have about 1,400 family members who we're dealing with who are homeless, and we have them placed in hotels. Quite frankly, Marcel, if there's an effort to end that funding, I'm unaware of it, and I get briefed twice a week on this, and so we're going to continue to do that. I would point out it is hurricane season, and if we have to do a shelter because of an evacuation, then we wouldn't want to do more congregant sheltering than is absolutely necessary because of the risk posed by people coming into that shelter with COVID. And so we're going to do much fewer congregant shelters. Where we do it, we're going to try to put households and separate them from other people who are not from their households. But much more of our sheltering will actually be done with FEMA's approval, and we've already coordinated this in hotels so that you'll have those individual rooms. It's just going to be safer. And having said all that, I am praying that we don't get a hurricane. But as you all know, it's August, and typically it's the August-September timeframe when we are at most risk for a significant hurricane. So, but that's a great question. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Yes,
I,
can you hear me?
no, well, Jasmine, I'll go to Jasmine. We're gonna come back
It's fine.
to
That's
KLFY
fine.
because Jasmine.
My name is Tracy.
Hey, Tracy.
Okay.
Jasmine, we're ready.
Okay, Jasmine. Okay, kind of piggybacking off of what you just said, could our hospitals deal with injuries from a natural disaster on top of the current COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because look, it's not just COVID. When we had the first surge in cases in Louisiana, and we had so many people in our hospitals, as you know, we had discontinued non-emergency medical surgical procedures, and so the vast majority of people in the hospital at that time were COVID. But you can only suspend those non-emergency procedures and surgeries for so long because those people then become emergencies. And so we have more non-COVID patients in our hospital now. We have all the COVID patients that we're talking about. And every day there are motor vehicle accidents, there are people with heart attacks and strokes and other things that we have to be able to care for. And so certainly if we were to have a natural disaster that would cause people to become injured on a larger scale, that would present a challenge, which is why as we were on that trajectory just a few weeks ago, where we got to 1,600 people in our hospitals for COVID alone. And even today, I will share with you, we have 28 hospitals today around Louisiana. These are typically smaller hospitals, but 28 without an ICU bed. So some people are minimizing the significant threat posed by COVID-19. That is an indicator right there that even though we're doing better than we were 2 weeks ago, and we have 150 less people in our hospital today than we had 2 weeks ago, we still have 28 hospitals without an ICU bed available. That's why these mitigation measures are so important, so that we can create the capacity we need for life-saving healthcare for the COVID population, but for the motor vehicle accidents, the heart attacks, the strokes, and to have the capacity we might need for a natural disaster as well. And that's why I'm encouraging people to take this very seriously and to understand that this mask is not much of a burden. It's not too much to ask to be a good neighbor so that we don't lose that capacity to deliver life-saving healthcare in our hospitals. Okay, Tracy?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. The first one deals with unemployment and folks who are on unemployment. This week kicks in the mandate, I think issued by your office, to kick back in the job seekers requirement. You've got more than 200,000 people in the state that are without a job, roughly about 56,000 jobs listed on the Louisiana Works website. Right now, is this the best time? You have a quarter of the oil field industry that's without a job. You have certain industries that can't go back to work. What do you tell those people who aren't even able to look for a job in their chosen profession?
Well, first of all, it's not necessarily the best time, depending on the perspective you take on it, because it's going to be really hard for many of those people to find a job. But if they're doing the search and they don't find an employer with a job available for them, then all they have to do is document that, and they will continue to receive their benefits. But Tracy, this is the challenge we have right now. Last week, the $600 enhanced federal pandemic unemployment benefit terminated. We think that that's going to be continued at some point and in some amount, but right now, there's no guarantee of that. People can't live on the $247 a week state benefit alone. And so it's essential that in order for people to be able to make it, to pay their rent and buy groceries and so forth, the essentials, that we reconnect them to work where that is possible. And there are thousands of jobs out there that are available. For individuals who can't work because a business restriction related to COVID has caused that work to be unavailable to them, they are not going to be required to do the job search. For individuals who themselves have COVID and can't go to work, they're not going to be required to do the job search. But the job search can be done virtually online using the website at the Louisiana Workforce Commission that you just mentioned. And if you contact 3 employers in a week and they don't have a job available for you, you document that and your benefits are going to continue. Now, we need the federal government to reinstate an enhanced benefit. But with respect to the state benefit, and another reason that we are doing this, Tracy, we started off in March with a trust fund for our unemployment insurance benefits that exceeded $1 billion. We're down to $270 million. And so we can't continue to pay out the benefits at the pace that we've been paying over the last number of months, because when we run out, we can't pay anybody. Now, the other thing is when we run through a certain floor, by operation of law, we either have to impose a new tax on employers for a greater percentage of their payroll to try to restore the solvency of the trust fund, or we have to go to the federal government and borrow the money for the trust fund and then impose a surcharge on employers to make sure we can pay it back. The law requires you do one of those two things. Either way, at a time when nobody thinks we should be doing this, we would be requiring employers to pay more of their payroll to the state of Louisiana to restore the solvency of that fund. And that's not a good option right now either. So it is essential that we do this. I understand that there are people who are out of work through no fault of their own, many of whom are not going to be able to find a job. And if that's the case, they document it, they'll keep getting their benefits. But for those who can find a job, for the sake of their own livelihoods and for the economy of our state, and given the precarious position of our trust fund, it is essential that we do that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. That was a very comprehensive answer. I appreciate that. My next question has to do with testing. In looking at the Louisiana Department of Health's website, it appears that the number of tests per day has been declining. Now, I also know that the % positive based on that website has also been declining, but there may be a relationship there. Is that the case, and should it be concerning?
Well, it is declining, not as much as you might think, because what's happened is we're having longer delays between when a specimen is collected and the result comes back. And every day we get results for the previous days, and we go back and attribute those results to the date of specimen collection. And you will see that while the number of tests that we are administering is decreasing, it's not as pronounced as it first looks. This is a challenge because what we have found is there's longer turnaround times from the very large commercial labs like LabCorp and Quest. And that's because of a shortage of reagent. And as those turnaround times have become longer, then our hospitals and clinics are opting to do other tests, but also on a more limited basis because you only have so many tests to go around. Now, we are still doing a lot of testing in Louisiana. For example, in the month of July, we did more than 600,000 tests. That exceeded by 3 times our monthly goal of 200,000. And we also have surge testing that remains available. This is federally sponsored testing that we have available in Louisiana. It's wrapping up now here in Baton Rouge, but it's going to be in New Orleans. It's also going to be in other places in the state where you can go and get tested whether or not you are symptomatic and whether or not you have been exposed to someone who has COVID. And so I do encourage people to take advantage of those surge testing sites as you are able to do that at no cost, and you can get a result, especially as we start heading back to school and to college. It's a good time to go out and take advantage. You will get those results back in about 3.5 days. I actually did one myself here in Baton Rouge, and that's the way that worked. Now, I'm not going to tell you we're unconcerned about having a drop off in the number of tests, because I know there are some people who believe, well, the only reason you have more cases is because you're doing more testing. The fact of the matter is you have a case independent of whether you test. The test allows you to know where the cases are, and then you can communicate with those individuals and with their close contacts to try to get them to engage in the behaviors necessary to prevent spreading to other people. So the testing is incredibly important. In Lafayette, you have until Tuesday to get tested at the Cajun Field Surge site. So I'm asking people to do that. Again, that's at the Cajun Field Surge site. You can get tested through Tuesday of next week at no cost, and you can test whether or not you are symptomatic or have had a close contact with somebody who's got COVID. All right, Jasmine, we'll go back to you, and then we'll go back to Marcel, and each of you get one more question, and then I've got to transition to my next one.
All right. Thank you, Governor. Well, so the case numbers are still pretty high and alarming to the average person. And I'm sure we can expect those cases to probably rise whenever we start school again. What would cause us to go back to phase 1 or even a shutdown?
Yeah. And Jasmine, what I've been saying all along is I'm very reluctant to go backwards to phase 1. That's why we paused in phase 2, and I put in place these additional mitigation measures. But we will go backwards to phase 1. We'll go to phase 0 if we have to, if that's what's required to make sure that our hospitals have the capacity to deliver healthcare. Now, we shouldn't have to do that. Even with school restarting, even with our colleges restarting, what the modeling has shown And what the results in Louisiana over the last couple of weeks have shown, in other states like Arizona, if we can get the people of Louisiana to wear a mask, to keep 6 feet distance between themselves and others who are not part of their immediate household, to stay home when they're sick, to wash their hands frequently, to do something simple like limit the frequency with which you leave your house. So if you typically would go to the grocery store 2 or 3 times a week, go once. Don't take everybody in your household. If we will do just those things, and then particularly focus, Jasmine, on those social gatherings, those backyard barbecues, birthday parties, wedding showers, those are the super spreader events that post Memorial Day really caused our numbers to increase. And look, I understand that there are some people who believe, well, I'm just inviting my closest friends and my relatives. Well, guess what? The virus doesn't know who's a relative of yours and who isn't, and it doesn't care. And so it's those events where people feel the most comfortable. They're going to get close. They're less likely to wear a mask and so forth. But if we will do those things and maintain the bar closures that we've done, we should be able to continue to make progress and lower our transmission rate, have fewer cases, have fewer hospitalizations, and ultimately fewer deaths. I will tell you, it's a gut punch for me every day when we report the death figure. Yesterday, we reported 50, and we went above 4,000 statewide since the start of the pandemic. We have to do better. We can if everybody will adhere to the restrictions and to the mitigation measures. Marcel, you get the last question. Yeah, so my fear as governor, and we've seen this play out, is if you tell people things are improving, they think, oh, things are completely back to normal. If you tell people we're going to start gradually reopening, the only thing they hear is open, and that they lose the discipline that we need to have. That really is what happened post Memorial Day, and it was driven by 18 to 29-year-olds and so forth. It's my hope that we now have so many people who have been infected, so many people who've been in the hospital with serious cases, so many people who have died, that people across Louisiana all now know somebody. And they know that this is real. They know that this is serious. They're talking to their doctors locally about how many people are sick and how many people are in the hospital and what their capacity is to deliver care to people, that we really do take this seriously. The other thing is, the messaging here in Louisiana about the situation and about the mitigation measures is exactly the same coming out of the White House coronavirus task force, whether it's Dr. Birx or Dr. Fauci or the vice president. And so hopefully with all of that, we're going to understand that if we want the greatest sense of normalcy, if we want as many of our businesses to be open to the maximum degree possible, if we want our schools to open successfully, we're going to all have to do our part. And that this time we won't be relaxed and go back to the behaviors that actually cause the number of cases to jump, the number of hospitalizations to jump, the positivity to jump, and ultimately the number of deaths to jump as well. So we can do this. I do need y'all's help in the media though, because we need to make sure that people are getting timely and accurate information. And because there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of conspiracy oriented things where people question things that 99.9% of all of our doctors and scientists agree upon. I know there's two sides to every story, but if 99% of the experts are on one side of it, then both sides don't get 50% of the airtime. That's just not the way things should work. But so you all play an important role, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to be with you. I do want to encourage you to get people to participate in the census. Right now, more than 40% of Louisianans have not yet responded. The Census Bureau announced the other day that they're going to cut short by a month. And so now the deadline is September 30th. And so we need everybody to participate. $14.5 billion comes to Louisiana every year that is driven by the census. Now, we're not going to lose $14.5 billion if people don't participate, but we're going to lose some part of that funding that we desperately need for our infrastructure, for our hospitals, you name it. So everybody can go to 2020census.gov, 2020census.gov. It takes just a few minutes to do that online, or you can call 844-330-2020 and fill out the census. But everybody, the young, the old, the homeless, college students who aren't living with you, everybody needs to be counted in Louisiana. And we just have until the end of September to make that happen. So thank you all very much. Stay safe for yourself and have a great weekend.